Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Azam Khan. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. Hong Kong's first number 10 typhoon signal has been lowered after 7 hours. Flights begin to depart from the airport, clearing a backlog of passengers stranded by Super Typhoon Saola. And workers and firefighters clear up roads blocked by fallen trees. Super Typhoon Saola has left Hong Kong relatively unscathed, although the highest alert, the number 10 signal, was raised. The observatory says the storm mainly affected the southern part of the city. Macy Mock reports.
After being in force for 7 hours, the observatory downgraded the strongest typhoon alert, the number 10, to number 8 at 3:40 a.m. At 4:20 p.m., the signal was lowered further to number 3 as Hong Kong returned to normal. The city battened down yesterday, fearing the worst from Super Typhoon Saola, which came within 30 kilometers of the city. But the strongest storm in 5 years departed with relatively little damage.
Hurricane force wind mainly affect the southern part of Hong Kong, including Wetland Island, Cheung Chau, Green Island, Stanley, Ong Ping, and Tings King. Local winds are weakening gradually. However, the rain bands associated with Saola will still bring squally showers to Hong Kong.
The last time the number 10 was issued was 5 years ago when Typhoon Mangkhut battered the city, but Saola was not as powerful.
The overall wind strength in Hong Kong during the passage of Saola were also weaker than that of Mangkhut.
At least 86 people were injured by the storm. There were 21 reports of floods, including in Tai O, where the waters receded this morning. This man said the flooding was not as bad as 5 years ago because residents and the government had taken preventive measures. The observatory had expected the water level in Tai O to rise 3 meters above the chart datum before noon today, but that didn't happen. Transport services gradually returned to normal as the city heaved a sign of relief as Saola moved further away. Macy Mock, HKIBC.
Normal operations have resumed at the airport as weather conditions improved. More than 480 departures were scheduled in a bid to clear a backlog of passengers, many of whom spent the night in the terminal. Sachin Katvi has the story.
As Super Typhoon Saola left Hong Kong airspace, operations at the city's airport resumed gradually. There were long queues at check-in counters. Many travelers made their way to Chaklapkok early after the Airport Express resumed operations this morning. Several of those lining up had to spend the night at the airport after all departures were cancelled at around 2 p.m. yesterday due to the storm. Most of this morning's departures were also scrapped before the first flight from Hong Kong left shortly after 11 a.m. This woman came 4 hours early as she was not sure of the traffic situation and her children needed to get back to Britain for school. Tour groups departing for Japan were among those waiting to hop on a flight. The group coordinator said the departure was delayed by nearly 3 hours, but they could finally make the flight to Osaka. Chapman Fong, the airport authority's deputy director of operations, said 480 departures were planned for today, starting at 11 a.m. Trains to the airport were operating at 30-minute intervals, but in-town check-in service remained closed. Flights began arriving in Hong Kong at around 11 a.m. The storm did not deter tourists.
Tomorrow we have to, our plan is to go to Disneyland, but we're not sure it's going to be open or not. So hopefully it will be open.
Passengers were relieved that flights were taking off now that Saola has left Hong Kong, but they have been advised to check with the airlines before making their way to the airport. Sachin Katwi, HKIBC.
Hundreds of trees were blown down by strong winds as Saola lashed the city. But workers say clearing up was easier than when Typhoon Mangkhut struck 5 years ago. Macy Mock reports.
Gale force winds triggered by Super Typhoon Saola toppled hundreds of trees across the city overnight. The government's emergency call center received more than 1,000 reports of fallen trees. Parts of the island eastern corridor were sealed off, including this section where an uprooted tree blocked the expressway. Grab lorries were deployed to help workers clear the road. In the new territories, workers chopped branches and sawed trunks after a row of trees collapsed outside Fortune Plaza in Taipo. Fallen trees also littered roads from Meifu to Thailand, but workers were not discouraged. Cleaning up is faster this time than when Typhoon Mangkhut hit, said this man. He added that it was easy to remove the trees as most of them were thin. Firefighters have also been helping to remove fallen trees, but one fell ill and was sent to hospital. The 48-year-old firefighter was cutting a tree at the junction of Mount Colette Road and Peak Road when he collapsed. Chief Secretary Eric Chen ordered various government departments to complete the clearing of trees and debris from major roads before the number 8 typhoon signal is downgraded to number 3 so that normal activity can resume as soon as possible. Last night, powerful winds led to the collapse of hoarding boards in Mongkok. In Chengsha-wan, a solar panel measuring 15 meters by 15 meters crashed to the ground outside the Lei Cheng Oak swimming pool. On Chatham Road South, a collapsed wire mesh fence blocked 6 lanes. And early this morning, a 20-meter-long metal fence surrounding the Kowloon West Regional Police Headquarters in Ho Man Tin fell onto a set of traffic lights. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
Casinos in Macau reopened this morning after a rare shutdown as Super Typhoon Saola battered the gambling hub. The storm weakened after making landfall on the mainland, but one death was reported in Shenzhen.
After an overnight lashing by one of the most powerful typhoons in recent years, the authorities in Macau lowered the storm warning from the highest number 10 to number 8 at 6 a.m., shortly after neighboring Hong Kong took the same step. Casinos in the world's largest gambling hub reopened at 8 a.m. after being ordered to shut last night as Super Typhoon Saola approached. The 9-hour shutdown was relatively short compared with the 33 hours gamblers were kept away when Typhoon Mangkhut battered Macau in 2018, costing casinos millions. Some roads in Macau were flooded and minor damage was reported. Saola made landfall close to Zhuhai before dawn after nearly 900,000 people in areas at risk were evacuated to safety. At least one person was reported killed in Shenzhen when a tree fell on a vehicle. The storm caused floods and left a trail of destruction as Guangdong province came to a standstill. Saola was forecast to move in a southwesterly direction along the Guangdong coast at a speed of around 17 kilometers per hour, gradually weakening before heading out to sea.
Overseas, India has launched its first space mission to study the sun just a week after becoming the first country to land a spacecraft near the moon's south pole. The Aditya L1 spacecraft took off on board a satellite launch vehicle from the Sriharikota Space Center in southern India. It will take about 4 months to reach a point about 1.5 million kilometers from Earth to observe the sun. The spacecraft will then be able to orbit the sun at the same rate as the Earth, requiring little fuel to do so. The mission includes analyzing the sun's corona, chromosphere, photosphere, and solar wind.
We are having 7 payloads. Those 7 payloads are going to study the sun as a star in all the possible spectrum positions that we have: visible, ultraviolet and X-ray. Means we are going to get the complete picture. If I put in a layman terms, it's like we are going to get the black and white image, the colored image and the high definition image, 4K image of the sun, so that we don't miss out on anything that's happening on the sun.
President Xi Jinping says China is ready to work with all countries to develop the services sector through multilateral cooperation. His remarks came as one of the world's largest trade fairs opened in Beijing.
Speaking via video link, President Xi Jinping addressed over 2,200 enterprises and representatives from about 75 countries and regions, taking part in this year's Global Trade and Services Summit in Beijing.
我们将共享中国式现代化建设成果。
In developing the services sector as well as trade, China will work with all countries to advance inclusive development through openness and cooperation, Xi said. He stressed that China's priority is to keep pursuing higher quality services to boost global development. Also speaking via video link, the United Nations Head of Trade and Development said with the changing economic landscape, challenges and opportunities must be addressed collectively.
The transition to a service-based economy cannot be an exclusive privilege of a select few nations. It must be an inclusive process where developing nations are given equal opportunity to harness the potential. China is a leader in the Global South and a pioneer in digital technology and has a significant role to play in this global mission.
According to UN reports, service exports reached $7 trillion last year, more than double the amount in 2006. Service exports from developing countries grew faster than those from developed nations for most of the last 2 decades.
That's our main news for Saturday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Azam Khan. Thanks for watching. Good night.